G'day team, Jeremy Britton, 24-hour wealth coach, down on the beach again just after sunrise. I do something with my clients which I call Flick Your Rich Switch, and it owes a lot to the techniques of NLP, EFT, CBT, hypnosis, a few other things thrown in such as Reiki, chakra work. But basically what it is in a nutshell is just flicking a switch in the subconscious. And very, very basically, there's some people who struggle in life and there's some people who don't. These people seem to find things a lot easier and seem to get a lot more love, a lot more success, a lot more money, a lot more toys, whatever you want to have in your life. And I compare it to growing up in a house that's completely dark all the time and struggling around to find stuff, struggling to get dressed and go out and do whatever. And of course you can flick the switch on. If you know there's a switch, when you can see everything clearly, then you can actually live your life a lot more easily. But today I just want to give you another connotation to the word switch, and imagine if you were switched at birth. If you grew up in Bill Gates' family, or if you grew up in Richard Branson's family, your results would be a lot different to the results that you've got from your family. It's just a matter of growing up in a different culture, learning a different language, learning different distinctions, and enabling you to get through life. Now, when I was a kid, I was taught to eat everything on my plate because there were starving people back in Africa. When my parents were growing up, they were taught to eat everything on their plate because there were starving people back in China. And of course, depending on where you grow up, if you grow up in Zimbabwe, you're taught they're starving in Somalia. If you're growing up in Somalia, they tell you to eat everything on your plate because there's starving people in Rwanda. We have the same myths and legends, but just possibly those myths and legends don't exist in the houses of the very wealthy. When you're a kid and your mum says eat everything on your plate because there's starving people in Africa, a lot of kids who are smart asses perhaps, say that's okay, they can have my broccoli. What if you grew up in a house where it was okay to send your broccoli to Africa? What if you grew up in a house where your parents taught you that it was okay to get your income, send 10% off to the poor kids, and then budget and spend on what's left, 90%. Most people who grew up in those houses where you had to consume everything you've got on your plate, also consume everything they've got in their bank account. And if you get paid $500 a week, you'll spend $500 a week. If you're paid $1,000 a week, you'll spend $1,000 a week. There never seems to be anything left over for saving, for giving, or for investing. If you grew up in a different house, if you learned the habit of tithing, then you would find, as these other people have found, that tithing is a habit that actually carries forward. Now, a couple of years ago, 2006 in fact, Bill Gates gave 90% of his assets away to charity. Warren Buffett also in the same year gave 90% of his assets away to charity. Robert G. Letourneau, who was a billionaire back in the olden days, gave 90% of his income away, but he started off by giving away 10% of his income as he was building his business. And over the years, increased that to a stage where he would give away 90% of his income and still had plenty to survive. In this life, you will get what you give. If you give money, you'll get money. If you give love, you'll get love. Give respect, you'll get respect. You'll also get whatever you settle for. So if your meal is cold and you eat it anyway, you deserve to have a cold meal. Wealthy people do not accept second best in their life, in their meal, in their money. They get good, give it away, and they build a life that's very, very different. Now, we can't go back and switch you at birth, but you can change some of your habits now. I'm happy to talk to you about flicking your rich switch, about changing some of your habits and changing your outcomes. See you soon down on the beach or at 24hourwealthcoach.com.